Now, we've talked a lot about Obama's war on coal. He mentioned before he ran as president that his intention was to shut down the coal industry. And now we see him moving to do just that with executive orders with the EPA. But of course, there's also other organizations that are joining in on this. Organizations like the Sierra Club, philanthropists like Michael Bloomberg. We're told that they just want to see a clean environment, and yet we're going to find out from our next guest that they actually have an economic interest in opposing the coal industry. They're offering some other solutions. Joining us now is Craig Richardson. He's a veteran of nearly 30 years, communications and campaign experience. He's the executive director of E&E Legal, that's Energy and Environment Legal Institute. They advocate responsible resource development, sound science, respect for property rights, and a commitment to markets, as it holds accountable those who seek excessive, destructive government regulation that's based on agenda-driven policy and junk science. And I think nothing describes the EPA better than that last phrase there, Craig. Government regulation based on agenda-driven policy and junk science. That's what we see from the EPA, as well as their massive grab for power, coming after energy now. We've had the governor of West Virginia say that the EPA is trying to become the controller of our energy grid.
Well, that's correct. And I think sadly, they had a very good purpose in the beginning. Back in the 70s, we had some issues, obviously, with the environment, and they came along and it came into existence, and they did some things with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. You probably remember the lakes on fire in Cleveland and things, and we were abusing things in our natural resources, and they came along and I think did some very good things. But somewhere along the line, we've gone from that now to, as you put it, a tremendous power grab. And when we're talking about the environment and energy together, the two have now completely linked, and that never was the same. The environment and its concern for that was primarily in the area of conservation. Now the environment is being used essentially to shut down, in this country anyway, the coal-fired power plants, which is an extraordinarily important element to our energy system, and energy affects every aspect of our lives. When you think about it, from our iPhones to our hospitals to our electricity to our heating, I mean, it literally means the difference between life and death, and it's that important.
And of course, it's agenda driven, and they're pushing for central control. And as the governor of West Virginia said, they're taking over the responsibilities that have typically been done at a local and or state level. They're now moving and centralizing that at the federal government. That's something that should concern everyone. But I want to get to this report that you did at E&E Legal about big donors and big conflicts, how wealthy donors use the Sierra Club to push their agenda. And of course, the first person on the list there is Michael Bloomberg. We've seen that Michael Bloomberg has a lot of agendas that he pushes. He's giving tens of millions of dollars to the Sierra Club. Tell us what his interest is in this.
Well, he's obviously a Wall Street guy from the beginning. He knows New York through and through, was the mayor of New York. What we did last fall was we started looking at the Sierra Club. Now, the Sierra Club is has one of the greatest reputations of any of the environmental groups. It's one of the original ones. John Muir was their founder in the late 1800s. And it really was a kind of a canoe and kayak sort of organization at the local level. And they cleaned up the rivers and streams and provided people an opportunity to get involved with their environment. And it did good things until, essentially the mid 1990s. And so we started saying, well, what happened to them? And so we we started looking into them, and we started originally looking at their foundation, which is a C3 organization, nonprofit. And we found, lo and behold, that 8 of their 18 board of directors were also directly involved with renewable energy companies, either directors or CEOs or owners. And what the war on coal is essentially is demonizing and in their words, closing down nearly 200 coal-fired power plants. And what is the logical and what else are they pushing in terms of what's going to replace that? Well, that's renewable energy. And so we filed a referral with the IRS saying that that's in violation of nonprofit tax laws. You can't have your board of directors personally benefiting from what the organization's mission is. And if you're out there trying to shut down your competitor and you're poised to set up in terms of renewable energies, that's a clear conflict.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me. And then we expanded that this spring with a more investigatory portal online called Sierra Club on Earth, which is an investigatory, as I said, website where you can go now and take a look at some of the other things we've done. But following up on the report last fall, we decided, okay, well, we looked at originally at the Sierra Club members themselves. Well, what about their financial backers? And lo and behold, you mentioned some of them already, Bloomberg. What ended up happening at the late 80s, early 90s was a lot of these family foundations, including Rockefeller and Hewlett and Packard and a lot of the other ones, started getting very involved in the environmental movement. And we thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And so what we discovered in a number of the cases that they too were pushing this renewable energy spectrum. In Bloomberg's case, not only was he pushing that, as he claims, for his grandchildren's sake, but he's also in a media business, as you are, and his media business is geared towards financial investors, and so he pushes out this propaganda all the time about how great renewables are and how bad coal-fired power plants are. And then if that wasn't bad enough, then he bought one of the most influential inside Washington, inside the Beltway publications. So these are Bureau of National Affairs, or BNA publications. And so he's trying to basically lock down the message that coal is bad, renewables are good, and the reality is it's the opposite. Renewables have been around for 30 or 40 years. They can't be the only way they can survive is if they're propped up by massive government subsidies, and they don't work, and they're unreliable. Wind, for example, is extraordinarily unreliable. You can never run a grid off of just wind because the wind doesn't blow all the time, and solar has its own problems. So, clearly there are financial incentives for Bloomberg and other ones to do this. The other area we discovered is that people like Hewlett in particular, and this is a strain that goes back a long time, 70s, we saw a lot of this population control activities going on. But these people fundamentally believe that there are too many humans in the world.
Well, it's interesting when you mention that, because in the first debate that they had with Fox last Thursday night, one of the questions to Jeb Bush was, you're part of the Bloomberg Foundation, and you gave over $10 million to Planned Parenthood. And he says, well, I was an executive director there, but we were really kind of pushing education. Of course, that was Common Core. I don't know how that really got him out of the hot water with the conservatives. But he says, yeah, I joined Bloomberg to push Common Core. They're giving money to Planned Parenthood. They're pushing an anti-CO2 agenda, which, I understand with renewables, if you're not on the grid, you can do some things on your own. If you're in an off-grid situation, it can be very useful for self-reliance. They don't work well on the grid, but there also is an agenda to push global governance, to push global taxation in the name of these carbon credits and exchanges and essentially buying energy indulgences. I mean, all of these different things are rolled together. It's always the same thing. It's always the depopulationists who are coming in with the climate change agenda and trying to shut down anything that emits CO2.
Well, the problem you have with climate change, why do we call it climate change? Well, because it was global warming in the beginning, and then unfortunately for them, the narrative didn't follow through because we've been in a cooling period nearly 20 years now.
That's right. Climate change doesn't mean anything, does it?
Well, no, I mean, it's a beautiful, how do you argue against that, right? I mean, the climate change every day, right? And I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is ultimately about control. It's about, if you can, look at what they did. They came out with healthcare, right? So we got universal healthcare in America. So now they're trying to control the health through that. And then if you can lock down energy, I'm not sure how much is left. Those are two huge areas.
One of the things I wanted to talk about, Craig, and we're almost out of time. We've got less than a minute left. Talk about the Hewlett-Packard Foundation, because I think this is interesting. They're part of the globalist depopulation movement, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, both of them are. We don't have direct information about Packard giving to Sierra Club directly, and that was our focus. But both Hewlett and Packard, then they kind of joined forces as businessmen. But yeah, they're both big into this population control. It's part of this sort of elite foundation's curriculum, if you will. They've been involved with this, and that's where Soylent Green came out in the 70s.
Yes,
this
absolutely.
Has been around for a long time.
That's all the time we've got. Thank you for joining us, Craig Richardson of Energy and Environment Legal Institute. That's E&E Legal. And you can find more information about that on the video. We'll list their website. You can see that on the lower thirds. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And of course, when you're talking about energy, you're controlling lifestyle and lifespan. Controlling energy, transportation, that's about controlling people. It's Agenda 21. Well, that's it for tonight. If you're not a Prison Planet TV subscriber, please support our operation. One subscription can be shared with up to 20 people. You can get it every night as it happens, Monday through Friday, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can share that with others, as well as all of Alex Jones's documentaries. Join us again tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.